just want to take a moment to just commend all of you because what you're doing is during a busy time in your lives. I know all of you are busy high school students. I think all of you are high school students. Um, that you can take time away from that busy schedule to do something like this is truly commendable. And these kids that you're teaching, you already know, and I've had the privilege of going through your website and hearing from Director Lee and Dr. Kim about some of these children you are teaching right now. And these kids don't have a lot. Some of them are probably even lacking basic needs, right? Basic human needs, just like food and shelter and things like that. So for you to be able to give them a little light, like music in their lives, I think is probably a hope for them. And so this is really great. I'm so happy to see all of you here. And I want to talk about the role of a music teacher. So that's my first slide right there, if you all can see. And just what is a music teacher? And you're more than just an instructor now, okay? When we're thinking like teacher, we're thinking somebody that just passes across knowledge. And really, you're doing way more than that, aren't you? You're like a mentor. You're like a guide. You're fostering their learning. You're shaping their journey, and especially specifically in music. So what a privilege is that for you to be able to be a part of that light that I was talking about earlier, and just something that they're hopeful about and can hold on to. And certainly you have influence in their life as well, right? In their lives. So what you speak about in that little short time that you have with them once a week, or however often you meet with these students, that really makes a big impact on them, doesn't it? So I want you to be mindful of that. And I don't want it to feel like a burden, but it is a big responsibility that you have, that you can be this person that they consider a role model. And so I encourage you to inspire by your example, inspire by your words, what you say. Everything you say is going to affect them. Everything that you do is going to affect them. And if we're talking about, what kind of lives these kids are leading, and if we're talking about, they have hardships at home, they have lack of basic needs that you and I probably take for granted, just having 3 meals a day, or having 3 healthy meals a day, having a proper place to sleep. A lot of these kids might be sleeping in a garage, might be sleeping in the car. We don't know, right? And so, when they come into this private lesson with you, that is their moment to kind of put all of that aside, and you have a chance to make this huge impact on this child for that moment. So I encourage you to think about that role. And so let's really create a positive learning environment. Now, take a look at that picture. Is that a positive learning environment? Take a look at that for a minute. Probably not. Probably not. Okay, that's just thrown up there for humor. What not to do. But we want to create a safe space, right, for these kids now. And so be encouraging in your words, and not only that, but in your actions too, right? Actions, we say, speak louder than words. We can talk all about it all day, but until you really show them that what is this whole mission called? Love in music, right? Show them that love, right? Through your actions and the way that you really foster their learning and their musical journey, and how you teach them. So my next point is create an environment where students feel comfortable and they feel valued, okay? So you want them to have an open communication with you. Make them feel comfortable to talk to you about anything. I'm having trouble with my music on this, or, I really don't feel in tune with this piece of this song that you've chosen for me, teacher. And so what do you do that? How do you foster that? How do you encourage them? How do you turn that into a positive, right? So I want to ask you to build a rapport with your students, like a relationship. That's what rapport is, right? A good rapport, we say, is a good relationship. So how will you create a good relationship with your students? What are you doing the minute these students walk into your room where you're teaching lessons? Do you greet them with a smile? Do you ask them how their week was? Okay. Are you asking them, how are you doing? How are you doing mentally? How are you doing with maybe the stresses of school? How are your grades doing? What is it like with your friends at school? Do you have any friends? So those are really important questions because you are their instructor, like I said earlier, but you're also more than that, right? So this might be the only time where they feel comfortable. And hopefully you create that safe space and that comfortable space where they can open up to you like that. And once they open up to you in that way, then they can also open up to you musically as well. And they'll be more apt to listen to you and what you have to say. Okay, so I want to think for you to think about, because I want this to be interactive. And I want you to put in the chat box now one thing that you do with your students to build a relationship that is stronger every time you see them. What is that thing or things? Just put in one if you want, at least one. But what is one thing that you do with them as they come in, or during the lesson, or as they leave, that creates that relationship with the students? Is it like you greet them, or you give them a high five, or I see, ask them about their week? That's great. That's great. Talk about life. I love it. What they like to do. Excellent. Small talk. Absolutely. Absolutely. What about while you're teaching them? How do you encourage them? Is there anything that you do? The flute teacher does the goofy dance. Okay, I might need to see that later. So compliments, definitely. Positive feedback, absolutely. Okay, I love this, guys. And if you don't know what you do, if you're reading these and you're not typing anything in because you're like, I don't have anything, I just have them come in. We look at the music. I say play what you've done for the week, and then I say goodbye. See you next week. If that's your whole thing, then maybe you need to rethink that, okay? Because you want to make a connection with your students that goes beyond just the music on the paper. Okay. Excellent, guys. Excellent. Okay, keep that coming. And so now that we have our safe environment that we've created, okay, just by friendly rapport, just by your positive attitude, just by you smiling, all of those things will make that a safe space for them and more comfortable for them to come to you. Because coming into you, believe it or not, is intimidating. Okay, you are a teacher to them, so they are intimidated. You may not feel that way, but it is. It's like you going into a class and you talking with maybe the most intimidating teacher you can think of, all right? So that's how they feel. So think about ways to melt that away. Now, some of the things that you might do is in your teaching techniques. So let's take a look at this slide for a minute. Building a rapport with your students and creating that relationship and getting to know them better will help you see how they learn best. And that's really important, because how one kid learns is different than how another kid learns, and the other kid, and the other kid, and the other kid. How many people do we have on our Zoom today? We have 70 people. Wow, we have 70 people here. Every single one of us learns in a different way. Each of us learns in a different way, all right? So how does your student learn best? So there are a lot of different methods, and I just listed a couple of methods here, but that's not all of them. But one would be demonstrating, right? How are you demonstrating your playing? And I'm thinking all of you are excellent performers because you're teaching this now, right? So you are good performers. How are you demonstrating excellence in your playing, or excellence in your musicality, all right? Or excellence in talking about just the music, right? Giving the students the background of the piece before they get to dip into it. That's one. Second one is rote teaching and learning. So this is kind of going along with demonstration. You demonstrate, and then they copy you. Okay, so copycatting is a great way. We call that rote teaching. We call that rote teaching and learning. We call that copycat. We call that echoing. There are a lot of different terms, buzz terms in education, but basically it is doing a back and forth. It's really just copycatting. So if your student is having trouble learning a brand new piece of music, you might do like one line, play one line, and then have your student, sorry, I just saw a dog pop up. That was so cute. That's fine. Humor is great, right? And everything. Okay. That's the cutest dog I ever saw. So you play a line, and then you have your student play back. Okay, that's a great teaching technique because then you're giving them little chunks, bits and pieces that they can work on instead of, okay, this is the worst way of teaching, guys. This is the worst way. I'm about to give it to you. The worst way of teaching is you playing the entire piece, or maybe even worse, not even playing it and then saying you play it. You've never heard it. You haven't seen me do it for you, but you play it now. Okay. That is not a great teaching technique. So you modeling it and then playing after you would be great. Okay. That's the best way. Breaking down concepts is my next one. Maybe they're even having trouble doing the copycat. So how will you break down that concept? How do you go backwards now? And that might include review too. You see that next to breaking down concepts? So going down back to things that you've already learned before. If they have not learned that well, then that means they can't take the next step up. So even going back, that's not a bad thing. Go back and learn the foundations. If they are having trouble, playing a passage really quickly, on whatever instrument, clarinet, piano, violin, whatever. If they're having trouble playing quickly, then maybe you need to give them some foundational things again, right? Maybe tell them, well, let's go back and take it slowly. Let's work on the rhythm first. Let's work on the pitches first. Okay. So breaking down those things first, and then let's put them together, right? And then you'll have them perfect those complicated passages. That's just one instance. Maybe your kid's having trouble with all of that. Your student is having trouble with all of these different, I've tried every technique, Dr. Park, this is still not working. They still are not getting it. Maybe there's something else that's underlying there. Maybe there needs to be, and that's why I have intervention, okay? So that involves maybe there's something like a disability. Maybe there's an inability. Maybe there's dyslexia. Maybe there's something on their mind. We don't know what the situation is. And that's when you can have a chat with them and see what's going on, or even talk to the parents sometimes. If you especially see that their parent is willing to get involved, then that would be a great conversation to have with parents. All right. I have to stop for a minute and tell all of you that you're such a talkative group, I know already, but I have to tell all of you that the way I do not like teaching is this, like straight lecturing. I don't like teaching like that. My classes are very interactive. Like we are not seated for 30 minutes even, like I have them getting up and doing stuff. So if ever you have a question as we go along, I want you to either put it in the chat and maybe Director Lee or Dr. Kim can alert me if I'm just off talking, or, feel free to unmute or put your hand up, that emoji or whatever, okay? Because I want to make sure to answer all of your questions as they're coming up in the slides. So let me ask you this now. Does anybody have any question on what I've talked about as far as teaching techniques? Do all of these make sense to you? The demonstrating, the copycat learning, teaching and learning, breaking down concepts, review, and intervention. Are any of those confusing, or you'd like me to expand? How about going back to creating that safe learning space? And if any of you have a situation where, Dr. Barth, this happened in my class, and that created not so good of a learning environment, let's talk about that too. And we can figure out together how to now pivot from that and make it a good learning environment. So feel free to chime in there. And if not, we will go on. Okay. Thanks so much for the feedback, guys, also. Okay, in the chat. Yes, please give me feedback. If you want me to cover something more or less, stop talking about that, then let me know and we'll move on. Please, thank you so much. Okay, so we have demonstrations and examples. So that's going back to my first point on the previous slide where it says, go ahead and demonstrate for your kids. We're going to break that down a little bit more here. So modeling is so important. All right. I see a lot of beginning teachers. I've seen plenty of them because I've been in this business for like 20 years now. Okay. I've had to watch a lot of beginning teachers as part of my job. And what I see a lot with beginning teachers is you have them play it. You just say, play it. You never model it. You never explain to them how to do it, or, what to do, or what kind of piece this is, or any kind of background on the song. And you just say, play it. You present a new song, go ahead and play it. So that's probably not intuitive when it comes to, the best type of learning, the best situation for learning. The best is modeling, right? That's if they watch a great model, you're excellent at your instrument. So if they watch that and emulate that, that is, perfect, right? The ideal situation. Show them. Don't just tell them. All right. If you're saying, no, your F sharp is not sharp enough every single time you play it. Don't just say that, show them then. Okay, show them on their fingers, show them on your fingers, show them how to play it. And then don't just say, okay, you got that, and then move on. Then you have them play it. Okay, that's important. You point out a mistake. And this is what I see a lot with conductors too, beginning conductors, when they're saying to the whole orchestra, no, guys, no, 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 no. You're taking that too fast. We have to slow something down. Then they'll say, from measures 15 to 20, you have to slow down on that passage, okay, guys? And then they move on to something else without going back and playing it again. So please, if you see a mistake, go ahead and point that out, call them on it and say, no, that's not how you do it. This is how you do it. This is how you do it. This is how you do it. And then you have them play it back, okay? Because unless they get their hands on it and try it out for themselves, it's not going to be in here. If you just say it, it's in one ear and out the other, and they're going to forget the whole thing that you said. Okay. Use visual and auditory examples. That would be you playing it too, all right? Or if they're working on a piece, let's say I know a lot of you are working with beginners, but if they're working on a piece that is especially like intermediate, advanced, have them listen to a recording of it too, or better yet, you play it. But if you don't know how to play the entire thing, have them listen to a recording. But that would be the auditory learning that's happening. Okay, not only visual, which we talked about already, but also auditory learning. They have to listen to it. We're in the business of music right now. So make sure that their ears are open. Sometimes you can even ask them, close your eyes. Is that sharp enough, that F sharp? I keep going back to the F sharp. F sharps are usually flat, that's why. But is that F sharp high enough? Close your eyes now this time. Play it again. Was that F sharp high enough for you? Okay, so very important to hit all of the learning styles. We have many different learning styles, and I'm about to talk about that in a few slides here. All right, I think I exhausted this slide. So we're talking about problem solving here. So, okay, I saw a question, and many of you submitted questions. Thank you so much for that. That helps to shape these talks, right? So we really can see what are the problems that you're facing in that small room with just you and the student, and how can we help you? We want to make sure that you have all the correct tools, right? We want to make sure that you're armed and you have all the proper skills and the tools to pass the information along to the student. So what are some common issues that beginners face? What are those? And then what are the strategies for addressing those problems? How do we address those challenges? Because the kids might tell you, well, every time I play this, it's not coming out right. It doesn't sound like when you play it. So what are those problems? And then how are you going to pinpoint for the student how to fix that problem? Okay, you got to give them the tools too. We're giving you tools, and now you got to give them tools too to be successful. Okay, so what are those? What are those problems? So can you please put those into the chat now? What are some problems that you see in your beginner students, or maybe they're even intermediate students, but they're still having the same problems over and over? Younger students get into tangents when we start talking about our lives. Yes, absolutely. Oh, yes, especially when they enjoy talking. Finally, someone's listening to me, my problem. So they want to tell you all about their week and all about their friends. And, it's a lot more fun talking, right? So absolutely, I would allow them to talk, but I would not allow them to. This is a music lesson. It is not a talking lesson. So, definitely get in touch with them, let them tell you all about the week and go, great. I would love for us to really tackle and then pull out that problem. Remember, and then you can pivot. Remember last week you were asking me about this? Let's go ahead and open your music. So I would just gently pivot, and it doesn't have to be some kind of magical flowing sentence that goes into the music, but just something quick. I'd really like to tackle that thing that you were talking about. Not listening for sure. Yes, lack of focus. I think that kind of goes together too, right? So what are some things that we can do for the kids that don't listen or have a lack of focus? Any of you have some solutions for that? If your students are not listening, how do you get them back to the lesson? If your students have a lack of focus, how do you get them back to the lesson? Okay, I see lots of things here, and that's great. Trouble reading music, not enough interest, frustrated because they don't sound good. Yeah, they don't like the instrument they're playing. Okay, well, maybe they haven't really exhausted everything that this instrument can do. Maybe they're just frustrated with that they're not making that perfect tone or that perfect sound yet. So that would be a deeper conversation with the parent too, I think. Practicing, that's a lot. Yes, rhythm. I heard that for the second time. She doesn't like to talk to me. Maybe they're shy, right? Lack of focus again, getting distracted. Okay, I see a lot of the same things. So how do we get our students motivated? So we're going to talk about that in a slide upcoming here, but some things that you can think about if your students are, and let's just talk about first the musical aspects. Okay, so like in string playing, for all you string players out there, okay, shout out to the string players. Their fingers feel my fingers hurt. You hear that a lot, right? I'm a string player, so I know my fingers don't feel comfortable. The finger placement is not always on pitch, right? We have that problem with strings, intonation problems, bowing problems, right? What about posture and hand positioning? Okay, so what might be some things for them? Piano, hand coordination, especially, I think one of the questions was, okay, well, they can do left hand, they can do right hand. Now, how about together, right? That's a big thing with piano, because now you're reading two lines of music and you're playing with two hands. And then all you wind and brass people, if I have those people, shout out to you guys. Breath control, embouchure, what about that, right? And then finger positioning, all the problems, breath support, how about tone quality, right? And so I have a lot of things here that I wanted to cover with you, but it's probably so instrument specific, but I'm just gonna quickly run down some things. Let's go back to the strings for a minute. You might have some finger exercises, okay? And if you don't know what those are, you know who the best person to talk to is? Dr. Kim, okay? She is the string guru. So if you have any string problems, I would definitely reach out to her and talk to her. What exercises would help my kids with this? All right. They can't play those fast passages. What kinds of exercises would help me with that? All right. Give them guidance on scales. If they're having trouble with music, then you probably need to go back to foundation, and that would be their scales and exercise. Are you having them do scales and exercises? I hope so. You can't just dive into the music without that foundation. And then teaching them how to bow properly. You might start with just open strings, because if they're not bowing properly while they're playing, it might be just the trying to juggle both of that at once. Let's move to piano. So all you piano people, do I have piano people in here? Yes, right, Dr. Kim? So piano people, if we're talking about having them play now two hands together, explain to them first playing separately, and explaining that it is important for them to have hand independence separately, and have them do things like play the scales separately with right hand and then left hand, and then have them putting them together right after. So going back to the basics of scales first and then build upon that, all right? And go slowly, right? We always want to slow things down. Kids like to play fast, 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 but we want to slow things down first until they really get that. How about finger strengthening exercises for piano too? If they're having trouble, go back to pianists. What is the ultimate exercise book? Hannon, right? Hannon. Ah, Hannon. So go back to Hannon, give them a few exercises there. If they're not up to that yet, just go with a few Hannon exercises and have them play that over and over. Just like they're not going to be able to go all the way up and down the keyboard, but a little bit of that. Okay, I'm going to move on to winds and brass real quickly because I think I'm quickly running out of time here. But give them some breathing exercises for just lung capacity and helping them with that. Give them embouchure exercises, just like even doing long tones. You learn a lot about long tones, right? And then some finger exercises for dexterity there. Okay. Let's see how much of this I can really cover in our short amount of time. And I want to pick the best things. Okay, because a lot of you said something about practice. Oh, and my last point on this bullet point, do you see that my last bullet point here? Practice patience. That means you too, as the teacher. It's so frustrating when, wait a minute, I can play that. Why can't you play that? They have to work up to it, right? Just like you did. So practice patience, but be persistent. Director Lee, would you mind fast forwarding one slide here? Clicking one slide. Since so many of you said, what about practice? They're not practicing at home. That's probably true for many of your students. That was true for many of my students when I taught cello. And practice was just, I'm too busy. I have homework. I have a life outside of music. So, how can you expect me to practice? Well, I would just guide them in how important it is. That's coming from you to practice. How in sports, take it somewhere else, something that they may know better, maybe sports. In sports, if you don't practice something, are you going to get better at it? No. Okay. You need to practice everything in life, everything in life. So even pull out, whatever is their favorite thing, pull that. What's your favorite thing? You ask them and then they tell you and you say, okay, well, you're really good at solving the Rubik's Cube. What did you have to do to get there? Practice, right? And so here are a couple of tips that you can give to your students to help them to practice. That was cool. Provide a practice routine. You tell them, what is your practice routine? This is what I do. Okay, this is what I do. And that might be more intense than them. Maybe all of your music teachers say like, okay, you have to practice 2 hours a day. That's not realistic for them, right? But give them like a practice routine. Spend 5 minutes on this. Spend 1 minute on this if you can. Okay, give them a routine. Explain to them that the importance of the structure of the practice. Why is it important that you don't skip scales and you just go straight to your piece, what they really want to do, right? Explain to them that. And then we already talked about the benefits of consistent practice. So I'll skip over that. Communicate the practicing to parents, okay? Parents, they are going to see their kid every day. You are not going to see this kid every day. So make sure that you tell the parents at the end, Johnny is doing so great. He's doing so great. He can improve even more if he were to just take 15 minutes to just touch his instrument, get on the instrument, make sure he practices his scale, goes through. If you guys don't have time, just make him go through the songs a couple of times, just as long as he has a little bit of contact every day. All right. And then you think about ways to motivate your students. Dr. Kim, how am I doing on time here?
I think we're great. You can go on more with, since you have slides, I would like you to at least share all your slides. And
Let's go
then,
quick then. Okay, I'll go quick. Okay. And please let me know if I'm going over time.
no, there's no such thing.
Okay.
Right, I agree.
Director Lee, would you mind going
Sure.
to the next slide, please? And I want to just pause for a minute and ask anybody, do you have any questions? This is not the time to be shy. This is not the time to be shy. Put it in the chat.
Yeah, you guys are good at putting things in the chat room.
Put it in the chat. Yeah. If you don't want to, if you don't like the sound of your own voice, sometimes people have a hard time with the sound of their own voices, then put it in the chat. And then Dr. Lee or Director Lee or Dr. Kim will let me know. Okay, Let's move on. Setting your expectations. Okay, so now you're talking to the parents, right? And now you're talking to the kid. This is what you need to do to practice. So how are you going to set your expectations? All right. This is because you can't just let them come in. And I know you all are still, in high school. You're not trained to be a teacher yet, but really important in getting your students to accomplish and progress for those accomplishments is to set your expectations. Make your goals for them, all right? And that is goal for next week is, okay, Mary, goal for, I don't know where I'm coming up with these names, Johnny, Mary, goal for next week is you're going to do this and this and this, or just maybe one thing. Because Mary, whenever she comes back, she doesn't practice anything. So give her one at a time. Maybe you have to do that for her. But maybe another student of yours does practice and they can handle more goals. So that's up to you as the teacher. Okay. That's why you are the expert in this case. And you need to know your child. You need to know your student. That's why. So short-term goals, what are they going to do for next week? Or, you know what, Johnny, in about a month, I want you to start doing vibrato. Okay. And so now you have a long-term goal for this student to hit. So he's really excited now. When do I get to wiggle like you do when you play? So give them little bits and pieces like that, short-term goals and long-term goals for them to reach. Maybe even by the end of this, I don't know how long your teaching periods are, by the end of your teaching period, and show them that piece of music, you are going to play this. And they will say, oh, how can I play that? That has slurs and notes all over the place. But you can say, I believe in you. You will play this by the end of this time. And so you are reminding them every week, you're building up to that big song, remember? Okay, track their progress. So do you as a teacher, do you just watch them come and go? Or are you keeping notes of each student too? You should keep notes of Johnny, Mary, whoever your students are. Keep notes of all of those students, even if it's like one sentence. And if you have a couple of students, before the next student comes in that 30 seconds, just jot down really quickly. Johnny, I told Johnny to work on, dotted half notes or whatever it is. He is working on exercises 32 through 34. Write it quickly. And then so you know what to ask him about next week. All right. You should have notes. And not only that, but if he is not or she is not writing notes in their method book or whatever book you're using, then you write it in for them. All right. Or watch them write it, make them write it. And you write it in for them. If they're wee little and it takes them forever to write, then you write it for them, all right, clearly, so their parents can see too. And then talk about it with their parents afterwards. That's coming up in a minute here. You track their progress, you keep the records, and you record their milestones, okay? If they've hit it, you write it down. If they've done a really good job on their on a particular song, write it down there, all right? And we'll talk about rewards and things like that in a minute too, incentives. Any questions on this, guys? Okay. Thank you, Director Lee. Thank you. Okay, motivation, encouragement. There were lots of comments on that in the chat. My kid won't do it. They don't want to do it. They're not motivated. How do I encourage them? All right. So motivation and encouragement. Guess what is the greatest motivator in that room? That's going to be you. That's going to be your facial expression. That's going to be your words. That's going to be your actions. If you're like, yeah, you're not getting any better. And, if you're that kind of attitude, then that's what they're feeding off of, right? All of us, we feed off of other people's energies. If you're next to somebody who's negative, what suddenly happens to you? You get down, you start to become negative. You start to become a little depressed or sad because they are, right? What happens when you're next to somebody positive? You suddenly feel like, oh, maybe I should, look at things positively too. Or, it kind of uplifts you. It changes the perspective that you should look at life, right? And so what kind of energy are you bringing into that room? Remember, these kids only see you but once a week or once every 2 weeks or whatever it is. It's a short time. So what kind of impression, going back to that previous slide, what kind of impression are you making on your students? So encourage them, be the one to that you want your students to feed off of, right? So foster student enthusiasm. If you are enthusiastic, then they will be enthusiastic. All right, get students engaged and excited about learning. Again, that comes down to you. What are you saying? What are you looking like? Encourage students to explore music that they enjoy. Okay, so what if they're not vibing with the piece that you are working on, right? Change the piece. Try something new. Maybe, what would you look at something. You give them maybe like, okay, out of exercises 45, 46, 47, because we are working on those things right now. We're working on that thing, which is, whatever it is. We're working on ties or whatever. Out of those three, which piece do you like? Which song do you like? And then allow them to choose it. And then because they have that choice, they feel empowered and maybe more enthusiastic about learning that piece. Okay. Reward and recognize good progress. All right. So how are you rewarding your students when they do a good job? And some of you said in the chat earlier, I saw it, that some of you are giving positive feedback, right? You're encouraging your students by saying, good job. You're giving them positive feedback. And, I really liked your whatever, I really liked, I love that you remembered to tie this time. Or I really liked how, you actually played your dynamics this time. Whatever it is, encourage them and be specific. Okay. When you give them positive feedback, be specific about it. You want to make sure that, they know exactly why and what they did well. But beyond that, what do you have that is for if they do a great job with a piece of music? Do you put a little happy face on that piece of music? That'd be kind of nice to have. It's, it seems kind of trite to you. That's so small. Who's going to like a happy? You would be surprised at these kids that like a little happy face. Or, go to the dollar store and buy some stamps that say good job or a happy face, and stamp their little books when they do. Don't stamp every single song, because then it gets old, right? But stamp the songs that you especially felt like they went, they did a really good job on that. So if it's rare, then they will definitely respond to that better. Or buy some stickers. You probably have some stickers laying around at home. Put a little sticker on there, or, have a little practice sheet or whatever. And if they practice, do you give them a sticker every week for that they practice? So, what is some kind of incentive or reward that you do in your teaching? Think about that. It could even be a fist bump or a high five. They love those even. Positive impact of recognition and rewards. Just talked about that. It can make their day. Really, it can sometimes just a positive word can make a student's day. All right. So I want you to think about those ideas. I challenge you to think about those ideas. It could even be, when you finish this method book, or when you reach that pinnacle song, that last capstone final song, then you will get a certificate. Maybe you already have that program in Love and Music, some kind of award or certificate at the end for these students, or small prizes. If you have something laying around, like stickers, like I said earlier, small prizes, they work wonders. Okay. If we can go on to the next slide, Director Lee, thank you so much. Communication with parents. This is so important because, like I said, you see them once a week or whatever it is, but parents see them every day. If you want them to work on something, if you want them to practice, and you need somebody to remind them because they're only 8 or only 10 or only 12, or only 16, like how many of you forget to do things if you don't write it down, right? So, or your parents have to remind you to do things. So think about even like that 9-year-old child, how much more difficult it is for the 9-year-old to remember. So make sure that you communicate with parents. Well, I gave Johnny this to work on. I wrote it in his book. Look, here, I wrote it. And I want him to practice that every day. Here's his practice sheet. So can you please, Mrs. Johnny's mom, Mrs. Johnny's mom, can you make sure that he will practice this every day? If you can't aim for 7, you have a busy week. If you can't aim for 7, would you make sure that he practices at least 5 times this week? Whatever it is, communicate with the parents. That's truly important. And because they see their kids every day and they want to be involved. The more you get them involved, the more likely that they will follow up for you. All right. And then you keep up your updates with the parents too. Make sure you have a little bit of time with the parents to talk either before lesson or after lesson, just to make sure that they're updated. Have an open and constructive dialogue with parents. Make sure that you talk about, well, if Johnny was misbehaving today, we had a little bit of trouble with this. So maybe maybe Johnny came in and he was grumpy because he was hungry. Can you make sure that he has a snack? Even something like that. Can you make sure that he has a snack before he comes in? Because he was telling me he was hungry today, so he couldn't focus because of that. Okay. Just something, if you notice something like that, or I'm thirsty during lesson, let them bring a water in or something like that. Okay. Whatever will help your student to focus more. Communicate with the parents. Talk to them about their practicing. And then if you see other things happening, like I was talking about earlier do you remember that word intervention? If your students are like, there's something deeper there, Dr. Park, it's beyond just the notes on the page. There's something deeper there that I don't know about going on at home. So then maybe you talk with the parents and, he's having trouble focusing, maybe there's something, and then you can talk to the parents, whether they want to disclose to you or not, I don't know. But if there is something that, they're having trouble with, that might be helpful information. And they might say, well, they do have a physical disability, or they have a learning disability, or, whatever information that would help you to help that student progress, okay, and succeed. This is my last slide, and then we have a few minutes for questions. So teaching materials, I was thinking whether or not to include this. Dr. Kim, I don't know if you're going to talk about this, but if you're preparing for your students beforehand, and maybe even now, you're in the middle of it, and maybe you see some things that can change, make sure that you select appropriate sheet music for your students. Any books that you use or whatever resources that you use, make sure that it is appropriate for them. You do not want to have a beginner playing an advanced piece. Okay. You do not want somebody who is playing a beginning piece if they want to be challenged and play more. Okay. So make sure that you are watching. This comes back again to knowing your student. Make sure you're watching for that. Can they handle more? Is this too much for them? Okay. So then this is a great time to talk to Dr. Kim about it. All right. It's a great time to, if any of you are in orchestra at school or band or whatever, talk to somebody who knows that instrument. All right. Your teacher, I mean. Make sure that they are on the right level. Okay. And if you have any way to use technology in your lessons, it could even be as little as like a metronome, okay, to keep them on the beat. Teach them how to use that. All right. And you can talk about beat that way, introduce that to them, and then how to increase tempo and things like that. Okay. All right. And then I was going to discuss some of these other things, but I think that is just some quick things that will be best for the applied lesson or the private lesson situation. So Director Lee, if you can go one slide forward, please. And we have time for questions. All right. If you guys do not want to say anything, but you feel okay with putting it through the chat, I would be happy to answer anything. There are 70 of you. So as you were typing things in, maybe I skimmed it too quickly and I didn't address your concern or your question. If I didn't, I'm so sorry. It's because it was zipping up quickly because there are so many of you, which is awesome. If you can just re-ask me that would be great. Anybody have any questions for me? Matthew, absolutely, bribery. Sorry, I'm going back a little bit. Okay, so we don't always have the same student each week due to variations in attendance. Yes. How would you recommend we set goals? Sometimes we don't always have a clear idea where they're at. Okay, so can I go even behind this question a little bit, unpacking this? So if they do not have that regular attendance, what is going on there, right? So that comes back to exciting the students about coming back each time. sometimes it's out of their control. It's parent, right? So then that goes down to communicating with parents, explaining to them, how pleased you are with the progress, how wonderful this student is doing in this student's progress. Peter is so happy when he's playing this instrument. I love seeing him every week. How can we get him here every week if you see he's missing sometimes. Having a conversation with the student and having a conversation, more importantly, with the parent, because probably it's not in the control of the students, would be, I think, key. If you are seeing different students every week, then I would say take that first couple of minutes to learn your student and have them just recap for you. And that might be like notes in their method book or whatever. If they're not your normal student, then you might look at the notes or ask them, what have you been working on? What's something you had a problem with? You want me to tell you a plus about having different teachers? Maybe this student didn't click with their regular teacher. Just, maybe that teacher just didn't get it. And so they cannot perfect this one thing that they're having a problem with every week. But maybe you have that particular sentence or whatever, or demo or whatever it is to make it click for that student. Okay, so sometimes it's nice to change it up. And now I lost that question because I was scrolling. Okay, I lost that question. I hope I answered all of it. Okay, I'm just going to grab a random one because I don't know where we started now. How would you teach an extremely young student how to read sheet music? Yeah. So how young is the youngest student in the program? Dr. Kim?
We are targeting right now the children aged 7 to 12, but there are some younger kids, whose parents really, older sister is already attending. They really keep asking for it. Then we sometimes let them in just for a opportunity.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it is. We're targeting 7 to 12 is primary age group that we are targeting.
Okay. If the target is 7-year-olds, right? Mm-hmm. They're reading at school, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. They're reading words, right? You start reading sight words. Remember that, guys, back in 7th grade? If you can read letters and words, you can read music. It might be slow, okay? It might be slow, but, they can read music. If they're having trouble reading music, but they can play, then start by rote teaching and learning, having them do copycat, do like a phrase or something of notes that they know and have them copy, have them continue to play. You don't want to just take up the whole lesson time to learn how to read music. That's boring. You're going to lose them quick. You want to make sure that they do playing most of the time. So if they're having trouble reading, step away from the music for a minute and just do copycat. Okay, well, your C scale, or your B flat scale, for those of you who do read instruments, and winds and some brass. Then just have them do just some notes on the scale. You play a pattern, and then they play it back, and that way they're still progressing on the instrument, and then reading will come later. Even younger, if there's like a sibling younger than 7, then you probably want to do a lot more like, playing back and forth, that rote learning and playing, or even less than that, just do like some clapping games, get some rhythms going, or even some, like, I'm serious, turn away from the music and do some singing and clapping and things like that work better with the wee little ones. I'm talking about if they're 3, 4, 5. Okay. If they're that little, then, have them get some basic music stuff, but it can be more game-like. Okay, more game-like. And then you can even do games with like pointing out different notes on the sheet if you want them to learn that. But reading music, 7-year-olds, they should be able to do it. It could be slow. All right, I spent way too much time on that question. Let me go to another one. Let's see. Yeah, that was like, how would you handle a young one? Okay, and somebody chime in if I'm like scrolling through this. I don't want to waste time and I didn't answer your question yet, or you have another question and you just want to ask me.
I'm gonna jump in here because I'm going to answer Janice. I keep on typing your name J-E and then it changes to
Yeah, J-E-N-I-C is our correct
spell. I know, but whenever I type it in and then the chat just changes to J-A, so I'm sorry. So you play flute, But you don't have flute students, you're saying, right now. I was just going to say that maybe you can teach these other kids how to read, how to do rhythm, even if it's not your instrument. Um, I'm not sure which branch you are, but if there are other students who play, like even piano, you can maybe help them. I can talk to Director Lee about this more, but yeah, I mean, the only thing I thought about was that you could teach other instrumentalists how to read, how to count. I know this is another issue for violin teachers too, and I have asked Director Lee, maybe you guys can start creating a manual for love in music so that you can list all the exercises that have been helpful to teach beginners, and you can start making a list of things that will be helpful for the future teachers. But does anybody have a direct question for Dr. Park? Because I am so grateful she is giving us this precious time on Sunday evening. So if you have any questions from her presentation or something that you want to ask her, please put that in the chat right now. Otherwise, we are going to give her a round of applause and then let her go so that I can take over. Is there any questions?
Thanks, guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and put my email in the chat. If any of you want to email me ever and ask me a question, I'm open to it. If any of you, I think some of you are close to graduation. If any of you are interested in finding about the music program at California Baptist University in Riverside, California, I would be happy to talk to you about that, and I could tell you about some of the music scholarships that we have for students. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in the chat.
Thank you.
There is my email. So glad to be here. And thank you so much for the opportunity, Director Lee and Dr. Kim. And I hope to hear from you guys soon.
It was really great. Thank you so much. Okay. So I do not want to go all the way to 9:30, which means I'm going to try to go pretty quickly. First of all, you guys, I am so touched how many of you are here. This is really great. It makes me so happy. And for me to see the faces, it's always such a treat for me to know that so many of you are trying to do the right thing. Saturday is a busy day for high schoolers. I know that. And giving up your time to do something like this, I am thankful. So I thank you to all of you. And thank you for coming today. So many things that Dr. Park covered, I think they overlap with what I was going to say. So I won't be repeating a lot of things. But as she was talking, I was thinking about our name, Love in Music. It's not just music that we're trying to bring to these kids, right? We are doing this because we're trying to bring love. We're trying to bring something to these kids that they feel that they are cared for and they are included. I'm reading this book nowadays. It's Michelle Obama's second book. It's called The Light We Carry. And there's this one section, she talks about what Toni Morrison said. And in that little section, Toni Morrison was talking about how to care for a child. And she said, I should just read this directly so that I don't mess it up. When a child walks in the room, your child or anybody's child, she asked the audience that day, does your face light up? And she said, that's all they are looking for. This is something that I would like to challenge you guys. It's a question that I'm asking you. Does your face light up when your students show up on Saturday? Because that's all they're looking for. And when you think about your teachers that encouraged you and that you feel that you really benefited from, those are the teachers who smiled and who seemed so happy to see you. I certainly had teachers like that. I felt very happy because I knew that my teacher was so happy to see me. I want that to be a thought that you go away with tonight. There's a light that you have to carry, and you have to offer that smile. You have to offer that feeling that the child, when he walks in, that you're happy to see your student and you're happy to do whatever you're doing with them. That goes beyond whatever technique, how to hold the instruments, how to count, how to read. It goes beyond that. And that's the purpose of Love in Music, right? We're not trying to just be a good teacher with musical notes. Well, we're trying to give something from here. So I want you to remember that. Another thing that I definitely believe in is that before you say anything to your student negative, you have to think of something positive. Every lesson, if I listen to my student do a scale or whatever, I always think of something that's positive to say, even if it's like, wow, you're actually holding the violin up higher today, or that your sound is better, you're focusing better. Before you try to correct anything, I want you to remember, start the lesson with a positive comment. That always helps the student a lot. Another thing that I want to emphasize is that you have to think about your students during the week. I think it's unfair for you to ask your students, oh, did you think about your piano lesson even once or twice this week? You know, you just complain that they haven't thought about it whole week. But have you thought about your student? Have you thought about what to teach, how to teach during your lesson? I'm challenging you because our weeks are all very busy. All of us, we have so much going on, way too much going on. But once or twice during the week, you should think about like, what could help my student? What could I do better this Saturday? What could I say that would be more clear? How would I explain this? And you know, your generation, if there is a question, what do? You Google it, right? All the questions that you have, I am going to go through some of them right now, but Google it and find out how to motivate students to practice, or even specific things like how to hold a bow, how to hold a clarinet. There's so many, just so many people who have put in some very useful information. I would like you to use that resource. Especially strings, I have a couple websites that I go to. There's a specific one called Mimi Zweig is the violin teacher. I will find the link and then send it to you. It's from Indiana University String Academy. Very useful because they will go step by step how to teach everything, how to hold, how to count, how to play the phrases. Okay, so right now I am going to go through some of the questions that I got earlier on from Director Lee that you guys sent me, and I tried to answer them. I'll go through the ones that I think are more general than other ones. One of the questions said, how much homework should I give my students? What amount of homework should I give depending on their level? My answer to that is that give your student a little bit more than they can handle. If it's too easy, they're not going to really be motivated. But if it's like way above their heads, then it's going to be too hard. I have been very successful. I give them like like a little journal book, and then they have to write down what they did Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I sometimes put circles. So every time they practice once, they X the circle. So Monday, they X 3 circles. Tuesday, they X 3 circles, just so that you can actually visually see what they have done during the week. Give them something that's challenging that you know they're not going to really get through, and give them something that's easy that you know they can do. Start the lesson with the one that's easy so that they feel good about what they have accomplished. And then you can always go to the harder one. But it is a good idea to give both, because if it's too easy, they're just going to be like, I can just wing it when I go on Saturday. We talked about stickers, right? I use stickers all the time. I use stickers. If there's one note that my student plays wrong, every time I put a frowny face on that note. I give stickers when they do well. I put stickers on their hand if I want them to change their pinky. Stickers are great. So I would just go and invest in stickers. Sometimes I have an autistic student. Skittles were helpful, actually. I did Skittle, like one time they play through, then you can do one Skittle. This would work well with little kids. But you gotta go to the lessons prepared. You can't just show up and say I'm gonna teach this person this song today, and then expect that it's going to go smoothly if you have never thought about it during the week and you have nothing to offer them as an incentive, and if you have not prepared what to say. At least half an hour before the lesson, you should be thinking about what you are going to say. Okay? Don't show up unprepared. So much of it is on you, what the student is going to walk away with. Okay? A lot of people asked about understanding rhythm. I do a lot of clapping with my students. Clap with your students, sing with your students, walk around and see if they can fit in that rhythm while they're walking. Metronome, very good. Make sure that you always have metronome downloaded on your phone so that you can show them and you sing with them, you go through it with them. Instead of being frustrated because they can't do it on the instrument, you should just leave the instrument alone, learn the rhythm, and make sure that they can play it in the right tempo and everything first. Because so much of it has to be done here first before they put it together physically. Okay? Memorizing music. That was another question. Make sure that you put the pieces into sections. Don't make your students memorize a long piece. Make them into little sections so that you can go back and forth and have them just memorize in small chunks. Sometimes I try to see if they can sing that little section, or if they know how to write music, if they can actually write it out, then that means they have memorized it. But I would definitely recommend making sure that you make them into small chunks. Do not make them play really long piece and make them don't try to make them memorize a long piece like that. There was a question about teaching young students with shorter attention span. A lot of you are teaching beginners and young kids. Again, I think you have to make sure you have a plan before you walk in. You can tell your student, okay, we're going to do this for 2 minutes. If we do well, we're going to take a break. You get one Skittle and we'll talk about Pokemon Go. And then you go back and then you say, okay, we're going to try to do this, and this time we'll do it a little bit longer. So that the student knows what to expect, that there is some kind of routine or some kind of structure, and you know how the next 2 hours are going to go. Otherwise, it's a disaster. They are not listening. You don't know what to do next. And you don't have any plan to make it better. So many kids, they respond better if you say, okay, we're going to do this for 5 minutes, and then we're going to take a break. Just so that you give them kind of like a frame for the time that they have to concentrate, and then they know they're going to get a break. And during the break, be their friend, you know, talk about school, talk about things that they like, and so that you have more of a personal experience. Okay. Another question I had was, is it better to keep working to master a single piece, or should I go through multiple simple pieces more quickly to keep my student from being bored? I think it's a good idea to have a piece 80% mastered. Go on to the next piece, but then come back to the piece that they have played before so that they are familiar with it. And the second time when you're attacking it, then you can make it better. They are more familiar with it, so they feel more comfortable, and you can talk a little bit more at a higher level in detail how to make it better. Again, you know, we're working with beginner and intermediate students, so you have to look ahead. Don't always react to what's happening to you on Saturday. Think about, okay, if so-and-so is really done with this piece, what next piece should I give? Which one would be good for her? Just so that you are already prepared if that happens. And there's nothing wrong with working on 2, 3 different pieces at the same time that are different levels. It will make the student more interested. But again, you have to have the lesson plan. You have to know, okay, this is a little bit harder, it's more challenging, but then you can just say, like, I have a student that I'm giving something really hard, and she's only allowed to play 1 line of that piece. But then the other pieces are much easier, but it makes her feel like she's playing something really difficult. And she's only allowed to play 1 line. And if she can master it, I say you can go to the next line. And it's like way above her. But it makes her more motivated to play other things, because she feels like, oh, I'm going to play something hard like that in the future. Another question was, what aspects of playing should we emphasize when teaching beginners? I cannot emphasize this enough. Postures, positioning, very important. Don't let go if their violin hand looks like this, and then they're like drooping, you know, droopy violin hold. Or with the pianists who are like really tight fingers. And if breathing is bad, beginners, you have to just repeat it again and again. Good postures will produce good sound. We want everybody to have a good tone. You know, it works really well with the little kids. You make them pose, and then you tell them about the good posture and everything, and you take a picture. I mean, everyone has a phone now, right? So you take a picture and you're like, look at this. This is what you look like. And then you can even send it to their parents so that they can have it in front of them. This is what you should look like every time you play. Just so that they have the motivation to hold the instruments right, to do it the right way. Don't let it happen that some of them just never learn how to hold the instruments right. It's never going to happen miraculously just because they have done it many months or years. Good posture, good positioning, very important, because it's going to change the way they play as the music gets more difficult. Another thing, you know, everyone has a phone right now, right? So you can ask the student, okay, if you feel like you got this, can you ask your mom to record you and send it to me during the week? And then of course you have to make sure you listen to it. But you have to involve the student, you have to involve the phone, you have to involve the parents so that this becomes something that they think about during the week. It's not something like they do Saturday morning and then the whole week goes by and no one ever talks about it, no one ever thinks about it, and then they come back and here you are like, you got worse than last week. You can't do that, right? So make it more interesting. A lot of my students, they love recording themselves and they record it over and over until it actually sounds much better. So that's something that you could add, even if it's like a very short piece. You can say, okay, can you practice this 10 times this week? And then when you have done that, can you record it so that I can listen to it on Thursday? Just so that it gives them something to do during the week that's more directly related. Okay? Teachers to contact directly with the students or parents, kids works as. Okay, so maybe if they record and then send it to Director Lee, then I think if they do record it, okay, then maybe in that case they can show it to you on Saturday, like the parents can show it to you, because it's probably less than a minute. It's probably 30 seconds. Just so that they have something that they can show you and they work with. Another question, actually, it was about a piano, how to teach hands together. Actually, what I think I can do is I can just send this email from Dr. Lena Lee to Miss Gloria, and then maybe you can send it to the piano teachers because it's pretty lengthy and it's good, but Dr. Park covered a little bit.
Oh, I'd be happy to share that on their Discord, and the piano group would appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's like a page, and I think everything, it's a good idea. She talks about mastering each hand separately, and how you have to make sure that you start slowly, and you have to make sure that they synchronize the hands. So you start practicing scales with both hands and coordinate so that you can gradually increase the difficulty of the things putting together. Yeah, so I'll just send this to you because this is something for piano teachers. Oh, here. Okay. What is some advice on teaching 2 students simultaneously? So if you're teaching more than 1 student and they are at different levels, I would ask 1 student to play and the other student to listen. I would ask the other student, okay, if you are the teacher, what would you say? What did you hear? Do you have anything? Did you hear anything that you could say to the to your friend? That is actually a really good exercise for kids to hear someone else play and then go like, oh, I think her, we kept on talking about F sharp. I think her F sharp was low, or like her rhythm was not correct. It's a really good thing for students to think independently about what's going on. So if you're teaching 2 students and if they're not at the same level, I would make sure that one plays for the other, and you're kind of like being the third party there. You just make sure that they're listening to each other and see if they hear anything. And if this is a beginner and like more advanced student, then the beginner can listen to the advanced student and be motivated and be like, wow, someday I hope I can play that. So I would make sure that you don't make one wait and then just work with another student, but I would engage both of them at the same time by asking questions. I would make one play, ask questions to the other one, and then I make the other one play and then ask questions to the first one. Okay? All right, I covered everything that I had on the iPad here from all your questions. Can you guys ask me if there's anything else? Actually, can you unmute so that it doesn't feel like I'm talking to a black hole? If you have questions, can you just unmute? Is there a request? So we already have an annual concert date picked out next year. We're very organized this year.
Yeah, June 1st is the next day, next year's annual concert date.
Is there anything that that you want to be doing, like whether it be orchestra playing only or chamber music, or is there something, do you want to do a seminar on how to work with the students, do a master class when some people play, and then I can demonstrate how to teach? Anything? Is there anything that you can think of that you want to see happen?
Yeah, there was a case in Los Angeles branch last Saturday. There was a little younger kid who has shown no interest at all in trying not to do anything. So the teacher was really struggling, and then he was experiencing a really typical, tough time. But he's trying to just overcome by just keeping him interested and as much as possible. So that's what I think that is Rihanna, just as a coordinator, she is asking question for that teacher specifically. That was Aaron Lee. He was doing his best. So we will see how we can do that.
Yeah. Why did he come? Because the parents brought him?
I think so. But he comes, every time, on time. But with this instrument, but he's really has a hard time in understanding, but he was struggling. So we had a conversation with the teacher, but teacher, he is a very positive. He said he would like to just keep on trying to make him interested, but we saw him struggling. So that's what was brought to our attention.
Do you think if you guys just played something pretty and just played for him, that kid would be not even like teaching, but if he were to listen to music, would he sit still and just listen to find out if that's something that he would like to do? I mean, if he's not willing to learn, that's hard to do anything with him, but he can just listen to something that's beautiful. Yeah, I would do that. I'll just say like, do you want to listen to me play? And of course, play something that kids know. You would know better than I what that is. But if it's something that they recognize, game music, I don't know. Something.
Question, because recently it has been drawn to my attention. Some of the violin, the beginners, of course, absolutely beginners of violin learners, violin students, some of them have really approached me asking if they could be transferred to piano class. So even that happens to even not only in Santa Ana, but across our 3 branches. So I think the small kids, they seem to be really struggling to learn the string instrument. And then they even sometimes just quietly check through their parents, asking if they could be even transferred to. And then one of the students who has been doing very well, the very little kid, and the Mongolian kid in LA, he's been doing, and his pitch was pretty correct compared to other small kids, but he decided not to learn anymore the violin. So we could not keep him there because he kept saying he doesn't want it. So I asked him the reason why. He said it's too painful. And then he's really tired of holding that instrument long. And then he really feels like learning something his brother is learning, the piano, because the piano is something, as if they hit something, they hear the sound instantly. But the string instrument. So that's one of the kind of major concern that has been brought to my attention. So I have no idea. I've been trying to convince them to stay until they overcome the top stage.
When I was a child in Korea, when I first started violin, I remember they were saying, when you're learning violin, you go in crying, but then you walk out smiling. But when you're learning piano, you go in smiling and you walk out because it gets harder and harder and harder as you go on. And piano repertoire, it's just, really complicated. Violin teachers, if it's hurting, if they are saying like, oh, it hurts, whatever, take as many breaks as needed. I think that really is the key. We can't keep pushing it. You just say like, okay, time for break. Like I would say every 10 minutes until it becomes more comfortable. It is much harder to make a pretty sound on violin as a beginner. But I would again recommend that you play with a beautiful sound and say you will get there. You have to inspire them. Like it's hard in the beginning, but you're gonna get there and you're gonna make sound like this. That would be my recommendation, because I'm a violinist, so I always think violin is like the most beautiful instrument. And I think if you can somehow convey your love for the sound, maybe that'll work. And maybe you can also just say like, okay, you listen to me first, and then you can try holding it. That's just a violin or just a bow. And whenever they say it hurts, then you can say, okay, we'll take a break. There was a question from Hannah, and I am not sure if I understand. Would you like to do a group lesson with the kids who are interested in extra lessons? Are you talking about the kids, or are you talking about the volunteers? Are you asking me to do a group lesson? Kids. So you're asking me when I come in June if I would like to do a group lesson with them? I see. Yeah. If we have a group of more interested and more advanced kids, now that I'm an empty nester and we know that this is coming like way in advance, I think I can be there a little bit longer and maybe give a little more time, and we can not just do like a 2-hour concert, but make it into like a seminar. There's a time for you to talk to me, and then time for advanced kids to do a group lesson. So we can think about that. So all of those ideas you have, please let us know, because it's not too early to think about it. It's really good for us to plan ahead to make anything successful.
Yeah, earlier the better. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I cannot emphasize enough, you guys can email me with anything, even if you're not a violinist. If you feel like we're stuck, then you can email me. It's just my name, Kangwon Lee Kim at gmail.com. Because the more you communicate, the better this program is going to be. We're not trying to prove it to anybody, but we're trying to get better ourselves. We want to make a difference. So I want you to, I know you're doing your best, you're trying your best, but I want you to communicate so that we know if there's anything that we can help you with. Okay, is there any other questions, concerns? Yeah, my email is in the chat right now, so you can email me. I have played a violin 45 years. I don't know. What I'm trying, actually, where I'm going with this is that I have so many colleagues. I know I probably know somebody who plays every instrument that you play. So if you have questions, I can get you in contact with somebody who has the knowledge. Okay? You all probably have your private teacher, so you can always go ask. But since this is something extra, if you need help, you can always reach out. Okay? Audrey was talking about students becoming impatient quickly, and they want to just move on after the mistake, and then when we try again, they repeat the mistake. Kids are impatient. So are we, right? I would always take breaks. Don't push, but you will try it once, I actually even do breathing exercise in the middle of the lesson. I just say, okay, 3 really deep breath, just so that they are like not trying to just do things and then get more and more frustrated. Kids are easily distracted, but you could use that to your advantage. You can talk about something else, like, oh, what do you think of this? Like, what did you think of the latest game or something? And then come back to it, just so that you are engaging them every minute, if that makes sense. Don't try to push your agenda for 2 hours. That is not gonna go well. I would, again, you know what? It's up to you. You have to have a plan what you're going to do. Don't show up and just react to what happens. That will be a bad teaching day. And Dr. Park talked about this. Having a notebook and writing down what you said to your student, that really helps. Because the next week you're like, oh my gosh, okay, I said this last week, so I should check on it. Because if you give the homework, if you talk about something, and if you never ask, then the student is not going to do it. So I would make sure that you have a journal or notebook. Make them have a journal, and then you have a journal, and then make sure that you guys communicate and you check off all the different lists. My one last advice for you is that make this count. Don't just do it because your mom signed you up or you thought that this might be good for your application. Make this count. Make this something that you are going to be proud of. Make this something that your students will remember. You know, they might become adults, and at age 40 they might say like, oh, I had this teacher, I didn't really get much better, but boy, she really tried, he really tried, and I appreciated that. Because none of them is going to become professional musicians, right? That's not the point. But we're trying to share love through music. And we're lucky that we actually have a tool that we can reach to other people. You know, a lot of people don't have that opportunity. So I want you to be proud of that. All right, on that note, I think we are ready to end. What do you think?
Okay, so thank you so much for your attendance, and thank you so much for your willingness to invest your time as part of loving music. I really appreciate each and every one. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Kangwon Kim. Night. Bye-bye. See you again.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.